Welcome to the RareErth podcast, a place where I bring in rare individuals to have rare conversation. My name is Manoj, your host, and now let's get the show started. Welcome to another episode of the RareErth podcast where I bring in rare individuals to have rare conversation. My guest today is Priyanka Bharadwaj. Who is she? Priyanka is the founder and CEO of MBA, that is Marriage Broker Auntie. Matrimonial advisory service. She basically enables singles to make one of the most important decisions of their life, that's a marriage. She basically helps people to arrange their own marriage. To really get a flavor of her style, you must actually go to YouTube and search for a video titled What Parents in the Marriage Market Say. It's one of the most funniest video and a collection of great observation that Priyanka shares in that video. Her newsletter called as Shapely Girl is a brilliant collection of her observation on all things love, dating, relationships and much, much more. She brings in a very fresh perspective to the marriage market like no one else. That's also reflected in her style of writing. Just to give you a little background about Priyanka, she is a qualified engineer with a master's degree in business administration. She, before coming to India and starting MBA, had worked with large MNCs like Amazon and Toyota in the UK. She currently lives in Bangalore along with her husband, Karthik, and a daughter who's 4 years old. This episode covers a lot of ground as we discuss the dating market in the country, the decision fatigue a lot of youth today suffer with, terms like ghosting and its impact, major roadblocks people face in the search of their potential partner, and some fun moments that she has had with people in the country explaining what she does. If you're single, then this is a must listen. I really had a fantastic time chatting with her. So please enjoy my conversation with Priyanka Bharadwaj. Priyanka, welcome to the RareErth show. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And I have been, following you on Twitter and on YouTube and reading your newsletters. I'm married. I've got a daughter who's 9 years old. So no intentions to get married, but I kind of like what you put out there.
One customer down.
So, like marriage is one of the biggest decisions, people make. And it's a very important aspect for, choosing the partner. And
Sure.
And your company, which is got a very fancy name, which is MBA, Marriage Broker Auntie, helps people make that decisions by themselves in a way, right? So
Correct.
Could you speak a little about who you are and what you are up to?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Priyanka Bharadwaj. I started Marriage Broker Auntie way back in 2013. MBA is basically a matrimonial advisory service. Now, this isn't exactly like a well-established industry or anything.
Yeah.
So most of the time I have to really explain what this means. What I primarily do is I support professionals make one of the biggest life decisions on their own independently. I, in some sense, facilitate introspection so that they've asked themselves the right questions before they make this decision. Because obviously what we find nowadays is a lot of decisions, like after, people are adults nowadays, are being made independently. Like parents are really kind of taking a step back in terms of what they let their children do and so on. But we may not necessarily be equipped to make that decision. Given that for generations this has been made for us. So it's almost like a hand-holding service to help people make this decision.
Right. I think I must give some context to how I got to know you. Actually,
Sure.
I got to know about you from Karthik on Twitter. So there was a tweet which was related to COVID or something some time ago, which attracted a lot of traction. I think it went viral, or it had a lot of traction, a lot of eyeballs. And I think the next day, he came onto on Twitter and said, "Hey, looks like this got some traction. By the the way, let me just send you details on marriage broker Auntie. And then, so that was an interesting introduction to you. And I just stumbled onto your work. And since then, it's been an interesting, follow with you. And another tweet which you had written, this was after I had sent you an invite. I wanted you to be part of my, early guest. And so I had pitched to you. I sent a DM to you to, if you could feature in. And I did not get any response. So, no, obviously, you had not noticed it. But it's been a week or two. And then I see one tweet from you which said, I don't remember, I can't quote you exactly, but you said, it's creepy when somebody follows you in all social media platforms, right? In everywhere, something like that.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was like a direct message to me. Like, this is like, no. So I was wondering, should I just, unfollow? What should I do? Like, this is my prized guest that I was waiting for. So,
No, it wasn't you. It was somebody who followed me on all social media at the same time, including social media sort of that I don't even use.
Okay.
So it scared me a little bit.
so yeah, I had a very interesting start to pitching to you. So I was just wondering that. But here we are. So glad you came on.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad I finally saw your message.
Thank you. So how did you come about with the name? This is a very, very fantastic brand building name. I feel like marriage broker Auntie. It really communicates what it stands for. So what's the story behind the name though?
Well, funnily, I think I came up with the name about 15 years ago.
Wow.
In conversation with Karthik, my husband.
Yes.
This is back when I think he was trying to enter the marriage market, and he was telling me about his exploits. And back then we were just chat friends. We used to chat with each other on Gtalk. I used to follow his blog, and that's how we'd gotten talking. And we were chatting, and he was telling me about his marriage, marriage market exploits and stuff. And I was telling him about how I've always found it so fascinating, and I've always wanted to learn more about these stories. From the marriage market, but unfortunately, none of my older cousins really share these stories with me, because I'm among the youngest cousins at home. So I'd love to hear, and I will be your marriage broker Auntie, to listen to your stories and set you up with people I know and stuff like that. And it was a name that just came up randomly like that, right? Yeah. So eventually in 2013, when I decided to sort of, make a Facebook page out of it and things like that, I was like, hey, this name sounds funny enough. I'm not really an auntie, so it sounds kind of funny if I called myself an auntie. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think, this is quite unique, because there are so many dominant players out there, with very, very professional presence. And
sure.
And you enter into the scene with a unique brand line and brand name, and make a claim that you could solve this big problem that people have. So how did you actually even dare to get into this space? It's like people don't even think. It's like a given default. There are some big players already existing. I feel it's quite a daring thing that you explored, or you have clearly identified there is a gap that these guys are not fulfilling, which you really feel that you can bridge that gap.
Yeah. No, I think there wasn't any sort of grand planning or anything that went into kind of starting Marriage Broker Auntie way back in 2013. It just so happened that I set up a few friends at work, a couple of friends who ended up getting married. And I was like, hey, this sounds like an interesting, hobby. So why don't I just start a Facebook page and set up people within my own network to see what happens? It wasn't so much with the intention of, okay, let me help them get married. It was more, can I facilitate introductions among interesting people, right? Once I started doing that, it was a lot of fun, and it just became a fixation after that. So when I actually did my MBA, as in Masters in Business Administration.
now you got to clarify that,
Yeah. So it was almost like a live sort of case that I had in my mind that I could sort of think about and see how I could apply what I was learning in my business school to actually sort of building a business out of what I was doing, right? Because I didn't do it for money when I started in 2013. I only started sort of, getting any sort of revenues from this after, completing my business degree. I mean, at that point of time, I was so obsessed and I had seen so many issues with the market, right? Like there are so many gaps in this industry. I felt like when I took so for most part, it was actually just part-time. It was only last year that I decided to quit my full-time job and do this full-time. So I think when I started doing this full-time, I had two options. I could either be yet another sort of matrimonial app or a dating app, or I could try and solve every little problem that is out there and eventually sort of be a one-stop shop for everything relationships and marriage. And I kind of chose the latter. And I'm glad I did that because it's allowing me to experiment so much without the pressure of having to grow really fast and things like that, which is the kind of pressure most startups have, right?
Right. Yeah, very interesting. I think that's a good start to. I think it's people may feel this is a fairly new startup or something like that, but I think you've been on this space, contemplating, working on it behind the scenes for all these years, right? So
yeah.
And your background, definitely you're an engineer, and you went on to do your. MBA, the qualification wise, and could you tell a little bit about your initial years of studies and where you graduated from?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I feel like this is a story that I don't really talk about often. People just think of me as this crazy lady who's obsessed with helping people get married. But no. So I grew up in Bangalore and I went to school in Bangalore. I went to a school called National Public School. I studied there for 14 years. Then I went on to do my engineering from MS Ramaya Institute of Technology in Bangalore as well. After I graduated, I went and worked with Toyota Motors for 5 years.
Okay.
I worked in manufacturing. So I have a very strong background in operation strategy in manufacturing, which obviously people don't know when I pitch myself as a marriage broker. Then I went on to do my MBA. I went to school in Spain, went to a place called IESC Business School in Barcelona. And after my MBA, I worked with Amazon in the UK. I moved back to India last year and I started doing this full time.
Wow. Now, look at that. I think if I speak to any conventional, a broker, the so-called broker, I don't think these credentials will ever add up in their, generations. I really suspect that. But you really have such a promising background, and you completely diversified to something which you're passionate about. So how did that go? How was that conversation with your folks?
Well, they were obviously quite sort of taken aback. They always thought they always never really understood what my obsession with trying to get people married was. Although my grandmother is always very excited about it because she's somebody who does this as a hobby as well. So she obviously really gets it. But my parents for a long time didn't really get it until I told them that I want to quit my job to do this full time. They were nervous in the beginning because they were like, oh my God, you're going to have such a step down in your lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. Who's going to pay you that much money and things like that. But obviously they were really supportive, and they've been so supportive because, generally in the family, no one's really sort of gone on this whole entrepreneurial route. And especially doing something that is so traditional in some sense, right? They're super supportive. Like a lot of people go to them and ask them, what is your daughter doing? Does she make any money? Or how do they survive? And
right.
Things like that, but they're cool. Yeah.
That's amazing. That your folks were open to the idea and really encouraged.
No, they've been really awesome. Yeah.
That's really great. Yeah, that's quite a story actually. Conventionally, if, people with that kind of promising background, in terms of education and work experience, would really not at all approve of a decision like this, right? So it's
I mean,
such a great story, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a world where everyone's trying to become a product manager, to stop being a product manager and do something like this is takes a lot of thinking.
Absolutely. So actually, kudos to you too, because you said that there's nobody coming from a business background in your family, so you also went into a territory which was completely unexplored, right? So
yeah.
And so I stumbled upon your newsletter, which is the Shapely Girl, and I must say it's like a fantastic resource to to really get a flavor of what you think, how what your thoughts are, what your observations are. So I really love the format that you use. You kind of write down what you observed maybe the past week or the month, and then you kind of share the resources or the books, and you write in a fashion which I think. If there are a lot of South Indians, I think they really vibe very well with you. I think there is that flavor of like only South Indians can get that. So you really put that element in your style of conversation and in your style of videos and messages. So
That's
I really
interesting. Yeah.
So. There was one article, and I'm going to quote your newsletter a couple of times, so
Sure,
bear with me on that. So there was a mention of decision fatigue that people experience, right?
Right.
So could you just elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, for sure. So I think what's happened in the last 7-8 years is that because of all these dating apps and the whole sort of advent of online dating, people feel like they have infinite choice, right? There is no pressure on them to make a decision. So you could swipe once, have a conversation with somebody, and know that there is somebody else on the next swipe. So there is no pressure to make a decision. But then when you sort of artificially try to pressurize yourself to make that decision, you sort of find it really hard. So people find it extremely hard. They feel tired to even think about making a decision this often. And it's a decision as simple as, hey, do I want to have a conversation with this person? So that's what I mean by decision fatigue, that like people are so tired of having to make these small decisions on a daily basis that they're not even able to make like big decisions in their life.
And that is primarily because we are flooded with too much choices, we think.
Rather than too much choices, I would say there's this illusion of infinite choices where you feel like you have a lot of choice, but you don't really.
Right.
Just the way the experience is designed, it makes you feel like you have a lot of choice.
I remember you mentioning that it's the art of it's a process of elimination. It's not a process of selection.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's
like like the sort of common anecdote that or like an example that I like to allude to is how, when you write all these competitive exams like IIT, JEE or CAT, the first step is elimination, right? Like they're trying to reduce like 10 lakh people to about like 5,000 people or something like that. So it's a process of elimination more than selection. And that's how people approach partner search, because they think that there are actually 10 lakh people applying for this position of becoming their partner.
Right. And a lot of people actually give up in this very stage where they really have to run through this process of elimination or, arriving at a selection. And they feel this is like too much work, right?
Yeah. I mean, like they shouldn't exactly be wasting their time on this, right? Like I don't even know why we ended up in a situation where we have to spend time on this. Like today, there is no choice but to spend time on this and to go through this process in order to find yourself a partner. But how did we even get here?
Yeah, I think we will dive deep into that a little later. So I want to go back to a very interesting experiment that you did with MBA, which was the Dinners Club. Dinner club. Sorry. So could you tell the audience, what is Dinner Club and what was it all about and how did that go?
Yeah, sure. So Dinner Club, again, was one of those things that just happened. I happened to join Lunch Club, which happens to be like your AI-based introductions platform. So I was on Lunch Club and I went on 2-3 meetings on Lunch Club, and I found the experience to be so similar to being on a dating platform. So I just put out a tweet and I said, hey, you know what? I just got ghosted by somebody on Lunch Club. I don't know if I'm agile or fragile. I'm starting dinner club for people who are single, right?
Right.
And it just so happened that a few friends sort of shared the message on Twitter, and it sort of, gained a bit of traction. And, within the first 3 days, 100 people have signed up. And
Wow.
at that point, I was like, oops, I've got to do this now, right? I thought maybe like 3 or 4 people will sign up, and then, I could just have a chat with them and it'll be over. But quite a few people signed up. And I had basically decided to give this 3 months simply because it was a bit of a low period for marriage broker Auntie, because, it was like COVID peak time in terms of lockdown, etc. And so a lot of my clients had put their search on hold. So I thought, okay, I have the time to do this. And so that's how I started Dinner Club. And so Dinner Club was very much inspired by Lunch Club, in the sense that introductions, these meetings would happen virtually, and they would also be blind. You don't get to pick who you go on a meeting with, although you can do that now on Lunch Club. So Dinner Club was essentially your virtual blind dating sort of project where people sign up, and I set them up with somebody based on their preferred age group, and more or less in terms of, what their vibe was like, because everybody had submitted a 1-minute video of like an intro. So I ended up setting up people on dates. I think we did over 100 dates, of which nearly like a little more than 40% ended up enjoying the date so much that they wanted to meet the same person again, go on another date with the same person.
That's remarkable. That's amazing.
Yeah, right. Like I would have never ever imagined that someone could have enjoyed the first date so much, especially on a blind date where you just drop all your judgment and just go with the flow, right?
And during that process, did you witness anything which was quite a revelation for you? It was like, oh, I didn't know that even this could happen, or something like that. Was there anything unique in this experiment?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest revelation for me was because, I'm in the business of getting people married, and we go through all of these matrimonial platforms, and you vet people like crazy before talking to them. Just the willingness of people to let somebody else sort of make a blind introduction was amazing for me. I don't think I'd imagined that people would be so open.
Yeah, I think, would you attribute that for the fact that, people were indoors because of COVID, or do you think the mentality of the people that you were dealing with, or who very much applied for Dinner Club, that was a reason?
No, I wouldn't think it was necessarily the mentality of people who applied to this, but I think one factor definitely is COVID, right? Like you don't have much choice.
Right.
Like this is something that, you don't mind trying. So a lot of people did sort of sign up to see what this was about. But I think at the same time, people probably were a little bit tired, right, of being on these dating apps and finding that experience absolutely excruciating. So yeah, it was nice to sort of see people being open to something new. Yeah.
True. And see, I have a lot of friends who are, like boys and girls who are still actively searching for a potential companion or partner. And no, this is not a pitch for a business, but what seems to be the major problem, or the roadblock that you notice with these? Mostly we're talking about the educated class, right? The ones who are working, both the men and women are working, doing very well for themselves in their careers, but they still don't seem to arrive at a agreement with the potential partners who have been introduced by the conventional approaches. So what seems to be the problem here? And I know it's a wide-ranging problem, but then what do you seem to see as the pattern?
I think there are a couple of different themes. One obviously is the mode of introduction, right? I feel like we've all sort of grown up on watching a lot of movies and like media that has fed us. That has kind of like made us believe that you need to meet your partner a certain way. You need to sort of have this moment of epiphany or like love at first sight and things like that. So I think we're so attuned to believing that the universe will give us a sign when we need to make that decision. So people don't sort of realize that they need to make that decision themselves, and like there will be no sign from the universe every other day. That is one thing, right? Like it's just how media like makes us believe, and like we've all grown up watching so many movies or like whatever that we've loved to everything. This is how it's supposed to happen. I'm actually reminded of this Tamil movie called Alai Parte.
Okay. I was waiting for you to quote some movie. Yeah. So
yeah, I remember watching this movie. I think I was probably 13 or 14 when that movie came out, and it was during our summer holidays. And I remember watching that movie and thinking that, yes, when am I going to go to college and, lock eyes with a random guy, in a bus or in a train and, have that moment like Maddie does in the movie, right? Where you feel like, shit, okay, I love this person and I want to be with this person for the rest of my life.
Totally.
I feel like that shaped my thinking of what love should be like, or like what partnership should be like, right? And I'm sure everybody has their own movie that sort of shaped their thinking in terms of what meeting a partner should be like, right? So because of that, you expect that you'll have such moments in your life. And because you set out with these expectations, when things don't necessarily pan out that way, you end up feeling lost. So it's very hard for you to make that decision, right? That's one thing. And the second thing, at least like as you asked this question about, the highly sort of educated people, what I find is the more we talk about gender equality and things like that, I feel like somewhere we might be losing sense of like just the differences between the two genders. Like at the end of the day, they're two separate genders. While they may be equally able and they must not be discriminated based on their gender, there are still evolutionary differences between the two. And I feel somewhere we have learned to ignore those differences, or we've, stopped acknowledging them, because of which I find that men and women think that the opposite gender thinks exactly like the way they think. And I can clearly see how all the men, generally speaking, want certain things from women, and women want certain things from men, which is quite different from each other. And so not acknowledging that there is difference in the way these genders think also causes people to not be in touch with reality in some sense.
So they operate with this preconceived notion about how the other person is, and pretty much they think they are the same way as as them. Something like that.
Yeah, like I can give you a typical sort of example that I would see, right? Women who are very well educated, who are great in every way, right? They're smart, they look good, they have like interesting hobbies, they take care of their health, etc. Feel that any guy who has the same sort of values as them should automatically like them.
Right.
Or who's similar to them will like them, right? They don't acknowledge that a person like them, like a guy like them, may not necessarily value the same things about them. On the other hand, men at 30 or 31 still haven't really figured out their careers, and they feel like women might be in a similar place as them. Whereas women, by 30, 31, most women kind of know what they want to do with their careers, because they have this artificial clock ticking that, they need to get married. So they try to make sure like the career part of their life is somewhat sort of sorted. And this is generally speaking, right? There's always exceptions.
Sure. Yeah.
So Yeah, like people not being able to see that the opposite gender is different from them is a bit of a problem.
I think this discussion could turn out to be very, I think some people may take it in a sense like, it's all about equality. So when you bring in the evolutionary aspect, there are things which are in play which you do not have a control on, right? So that's what
Yeah,
you mean by
yeah.
that, right? So
yeah, like for example, like women, like there are some women who tell me, no, I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, right? I'm just trying to tell you how women, like, sometimes women think, and it makes you wonder. Like there are, like when women come and say, hey, listen, I want the guy to, earn much more than I do. And then you ask them, but wait, we're talking about equality. You want someone who appreciates your independence, but why do you want somebody who makes more money than you? And then you think, and then they come back and say, yeah, I mean, that's true. But then, I do want to have children. And if I were to take a break from my career for a couple of years to have a few kids, I'd like my husband to be able to support our lifestyle. And then you think, yeah, I mean, if you had a choice, you probably would make the husband have the child, right? And you probably wouldn't want him to make more than you.
Right.
Right? I mean, so there are so many of these things that are so specific to genders that you can't look at them from the angle of men and women are equal. Yes, they're equally able people, but there are differences.
Yeah, totally agree that. I think also, there was a very interesting piece that you'd written about how I think it was about the end product, right? So mostly the men who go through the entire process of getting themselves educated, going through these different institutes, and completely away from the opposite gender, and completely devoted and invested with their own setting their careers and getting that going. By the time they come out to the marketplace, they have no idea about emotional quotient or how to really communicate with a girl.
True.
Right.
True.
And so they so that gap or that issue, are people aware of this, or they are completely clueless about it? What do you see?
I tend to think that people are clueless about it till it's kind of really late. It's only when they, like, their parents have been forcing them for a couple of years to get married, and they find that they're not having a lot of luck because they've sort of grown up in some sense, moved away from their hometowns. They're working in bigger cities, and they find certain types of girls interesting, but that's not the type of girl that's coming in terms of a proposal through family. That's when it hits them. And that's when they realize, oh shit, I should have taken this into my own hands, but I don't really know how to do this, right?
Right.
And I feel like that's really such a huge gap. And it is one of my personal sort of like passion projects, is to provide some sort of intervention, not me per se, but if there was some way for an intervention to say, hey, listen, you don't just have to go through IITJ coaching or like CAT coaching or something like that. You also need to be coached to understand that at some point you may want to get married, and you need to know how to build your own personal brand so that you can be appealing to the opposite gender.
Absolutely. I think such a valuable lesson. Such a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
Yes. Please continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say there should be something like a Y Combinator for love, like a love combinator.
I think I see you coming with a new idea now. Okay.
I mean, it was kind of something that I was talking about with a few friends 6 months ago, like 6-7 months ago, before COVID started, where we were like, you've got to induct people and get a bunch of like people to coach them to sort of think about other things apart from just education or career, because there's much more in life than just that. And you want to do it at the right time, because they can then use the networking opportunities that are available in colleges or, at work to make use of it, rather than having to wait till they need to get to a matrimonial platform and things like that.
That will be fascinating. I think if you can really make that happen, I think that'll be a game changer for a lot of people, because I see a lot of grown men. We're not talking about boys. I'm talking about grown men seem completely, clueless about really how to even talk to a girl when, even when they are presented with a situation where it's a proposal situation and he's sitting one on one with the girl and
Yeah.
he's like completely mum, or, he's talking about things which is completely irrelevant. Right. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw like that guy Akshay in Indian matchmaking, right? Like where
oh, yeah.
he was incapable of having a conversation.
Right, right. So, from the definition of society, he must have, he's an achiever. He is, done well for himself. He's got all the credentials. But from an emotional standpoint, I think he would be a disaster, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and so you had mentioned about the, Indian marriage can be, categorized as the Toyota way or the Amazon way.
Yeah, yeah.
Could you share about that, please?
Oh wow! I think I wrote about this a while back. Now I don't even remember what it was about. I think it was about, if I remember correctly, it was about like in Toyota, like because these are two companies that I worked with a very strong culture, right? Um, in Toyota, like before you make a decision, you consult with everybody. You have to like build consensus and align and like everything before an actual decision is made. Whereas um, at Amazon, you sort of make a decision and then sort of answer questions, that sort of make you reflect on whether your decision was right or wrong. I was just thinking about this earlier today, right? Like I think it's fascinating uh, to think about decisions being made the Amazon way, because very often at Amazon we spoke about something like two of the leadership principles that they follow in Amazon is bias for action and deep dive. And we always talk about how you need to find that fine balance between the two of them. You can't mull over deep dive forever without taking any action, but at the same time you can't take action in haste. You've got to deep dive a little bit. And I think it applies so well to the like decision of finding yourself a partner, because I feel like people spend years trying to find the perfect one, versus just acting on it. And there are also some people who decide on a whim and then kind of struggle with that decision they make. So it's about finding that balance and working with that.
And in the recent times, or with the current generation that you work with, do you see any bias or any approach which is biased to one of either the Amazon way, or do you still feel they spend too much time, thinking on it and not acting on it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? Like a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking, waiting for that perfect person to come along, for the universe to give them a sign on, how the decision needs to be made, because it's daunting, right? It's almost like one of the first decisions you make as an adult, pretty much independently. Like till that point, it's like either your parents tell you what to do, or you get a rank, and you end up taking a seat where you get, at least in India, right? And because of that, you don't independently like make too many decisions as adults. And this is one of those first decisions you make. So obviously, you're not going to be like super confident in terms of making this decision. And that naturally reflects in the amount of time people take and how much they struggle with it. And so that is why probably sometimes I see a lot of people who approach this the Amazon way, where they ask their parents, they ask their friends, they ask everybody possible as to who the right one is for them, before they act on it.
And who are your main clients? Are they the parents, or are they the candidates themselves approach you? Who are your target audience?
Yeah, I work only with people who are looking to get married themselves. I don't work with parents at all. I do get leads from parents,
Okay.
but I don't work with the parents, because the whole idea is, hey, you can do this on your own. You've got this, and I will help you think through this decision. I understand where you come from, because I'm from a similar generation, and I speak to tons of people from your generation. But at the same time, I've been married for almost a decade myself, so I know what's on the other side, like your parents do, or like any auntie does, right? So, so I bring that perspective, and so my clients are people who are looking to get married.
Okay, and what do you think is the perception of these uncle and aunties about you? What do they think about you? Like, do you get any vibe from the parents? Like, what kind of work you do?
I don't think anybody understands what I do. Yeah, I think for me, what happens is because what I do is so niche, I really have to explain myself and, how I'm trying to help people. Most of the time, they don't get it. A lot of parents come and tell me, oh, my daughter is very smart, or like my son is very smart. He doesn't need any advice.
Right.
And they're like, what do you do? Like, why are people paying you money for this? Like, so no, they don't really get what I do. But sometimes what I find is a lot of parents seek comfort in somebody who shares their pain,
their
right?
sentiment,
like they find that, yeah, exactly. Like they're constantly telling their children to get married because they're worried that the older you get, the lower your supply is, which is a very legit concern. But at the same time, they don't want to push their kids too much because kids nowadays are much more independent, etc. And when they see a lot of their friends not necessarily struggling with the same issue, they feel a little alone.
Right.
Just like how single people do, right? Like if a lot of your friends are married and you're the only one who's single, you feel a bit lonely. And parents feel the same way, right? They have no one to talk to. And there's also a lot of pressure from the society saying, oh, what are you doing with your life? Why aren't you getting your 30-year-old daughter married or something like that, right? So to be able to talk to me is very comforting. So sometimes, parents reach out to me through relatives or friends and they just kind of unload, which I really don't mind because it's nice to talk to parents sometimes. The kind of parents that I get a little frustrated talking to sometimes is people who don't then subsequently introduce me to their children and they kind of shield them a lot. Kind of defeats the purpose. And it's not really from a oh, you're not bringing me business perspective. It's more like, hey, this is the reason your kid's not getting married because you're protecting them too much.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the sense of always guarding for this son or daughter all the way till even after they're adults, I think that really defeats the purpose. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what I found interesting about your approach is if I really look into your vocabulary or the way you use language, it sounds so much like I'm communicating with somebody who is a totally technical person, which you are, and you use words like visibility, transaction time, and supply of cost, and I will just not believe it's in the context of marriage that you're using it, and even I think the recent one where you mentioned about as an asset.
I'm pretty sure my clients hate it because, they like to think of this process as, oh, it's about me falling in love. And, when I say marriage market, they're like, can you please not call it that? I'm like, okay,
I think you must just continue with it because it's like so awesome to have such fresh language in that space. And I think it appeals to people, at least to the class, the educated ones who really are open to exploring that. I think it's so good. So good. So,
thank you.
And so you had mentioned about listening to one of the podcasts, that is the Knowledge Project, where Shane Parrish is in conversation with Esther, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, and there was an interesting dynamic discussed there, which was about excitement and stability, right?
Yeah.
Could you just share a little bit in detail about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of Esther Perel's hallmark sort of, work, right? Where she talks about the problem with modern relationships is people, like until very recently, people sort of married, for economic sort of reasons. Women didn't work, they needed some sort of financial support, and that's why they married men and, things like that. But it's only like more recently in the last, 30, 40 years, or probably less than that, we're marrying for love. Like where people are expecting all of their needs to be satisfied by one person, which she says is pretty unrealistic. But at the same time, the problem with that is you're expecting excitement and stability at the same time, which is quite contrary, right? Like, how can you get both of it at the same time? Like, there will be excitement in the beginning when there's novelty and you don't really know too much about each other. I have this really sort of like weird analogy to sort of share, right? If you think about sex, imagine just the process of sex, right? Like, if there is in and out, sex is exciting. But if somebody just got into you and lay there, it's not exciting. It's stable, right? It's that whole motion of up and down that causes excitement, and it's similar to that.
Now, I will never forget this point for sure. This is very interesting. I think
that's
good.
Graphic.
I think that's interesting, because I think the element of excitement and stability, I think also the factor of age. If a girl is very young and then she's aspiring for these excitement at a certain stage, it is understandable. So now let's say she's in a early 30s, and then she's still not found her love. She may have a different priority, and since she didn't have her share of excitement, she may also expect the same from the partner. That's what you're trying to say, right? It could be excitement as well as stability, both that they expect, which may or may not happen.
No. So Esther talks about excitement and stability from the context of committed relationships, like where you're already in a relationship and you're expecting stability in the relationship along with finding your partner exciting throughout your life.
Okay.
Like where she says that, like, it's very contradictory and that doesn't exist. And the fact that we're even expecting something like this is crazy, which is why a lot of marriages fail nowadays, because you're expecting the impossible. Now, to your point about, women in 20s might want excitement, whereas women in 30s might expect something else. Not true. I get a lot of clients who are in their 50s and are looking for excitement.
I had missed that aspect about, so she was talking in the context of married couple. Okay.
Yeah.
So moving on to another interesting aspect about, the recent times that we hear a jargon called ghosting. Right.
Yeah.
And this is, the new terminologies which has come into play. There are many things maybe like ghosting. So could you just share your thoughts on what is ghosting, and are there any other interesting such words coined recently?
Yeah, actually, I started learning about like some new words only recently, because I did this little project where I spoke. So because of Marriage Broker Auntie, I get access to only people of a certain age group. They're 25 and over, because that's when they're looking to get married. Like before that, marriage seems like a crazy idea and stuff like that. So I did this project where I spoke to a huge number of people between the ages 15 to 25 to learn about what they think about relationships and love, and what shapes their behavior in relationships and things like that. So I learned a lot of new words. There is gaslighting, there is breadcrumbing, there's ghosting.
Oh, okay.
there are a bunch of things that I don't think I completely understood. But yeah, we'll talk about ghosting because, it happens a lot. Ghosting, from my perspective, is anything from you got a match with somebody on a dating app and they don't respond to your text if you send them a text after that, or they go missing after that, right? Like when you get a match, what is the expected behavior? That, they talk to you, or when you talk to them, they respond. When they go MIA, and when they use going MIA as a way to tell you what they're thinking, right from there to people who've been in relationships or like have been dating for a while, and suddenly people go missing and you never hear from them after that. Like everything that is in between that is ghosting for me, right? Like where people are not able to communicate verbally, that for me is ghosting. In fact, we saw a little bit of that even on Dinner Club, not too much, very, very little. But nevertheless, it was unpleasant, and it really made me realize how sad ghosting is. For me, the problem with ghosting is there's this certain callousness among people in terms of how they treat each other, right? Like, how often would you hear a story of someone going missing and not responding in a conversation, let's say 20 years ago? Not much, no?
Not common at all.
Yeah. But like with the whole advent of dating apps, like it's so easy to pretend like somebody doesn't exist or feel like you not closing something is okay.
What do you think, makes people behave that way? Like, what causes somebody to not be accountable or respond or say something and just vanish? Like,
it's easy to do it today. There's no friction to vanish. So when there's no friction to vanish and it's the easier way out of a situation, why not, right? They're like,
Okay.
oh yeah, this person will understand. Like, big deal. I'm sure they're talking to many people and they're not really paying attention to me. So I don't need to have a proper closure with this person. And they'll understand. Like the whole assumption of they're going to be okay and this is not going to affect someone, that your actions will not affect somebody. This assumption is what allows people to be callous about it.
Yeah. And I think, as you rightly stated, the person who's experiencing that, I think that leaves them in a very, very bad taste with that, right? So, and it takes them a long time to overcome that feeling of, feel left out and completely not feeling being acknowledged, right? So,
yeah, absolutely, right? Like, I mean, like some people may not be affected by it. The same people may not be affected by it sometimes, but it really depends on the state of mind you're in, what you are going through at that point of time and how you read the signal, right? If you've had a really shitty day and, you were feeling really low on confidence and you came here and you thought someone looked nice and, you sent them a text and they didn't respond, even after matching with you, what's your natural reaction? You start to doubt yourself, right? You start to wonder if you are really all the mistakes you did that day.
Right, yeah. And you start connecting the dots and start making meaning out of that, right? So
yeah, thanks to Steve Jobs.
True. Do you feel responsible for matchmaking? Do you feel like when something doesn't work out, do you personally feel responsible?
So I don't usually matchmake, but the very few times that I have, like incidentally, not as a service, but just because, I knew people, I look at it merely as an introduction. So all I do is I say, hey, I know this person, you know this person, you guys might get along. So I'm making an intro, see what you make of it, right? What people make of this introduction is really up to them. So I don't assume responsibility for a decision I don't make, because I don't make the decision of whether they should be getting married or getting into a relationship or any such thing. But in terms of an introduction, I don't think I regret any introduction I've made till date. Having said that, choosing a partner is also a gamble, right? Like sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. And it's for a variety of reasons that, isn't necessarily always in our control. So when it doesn't, I guess it's just unfortunate, right? Thankfully, I don't have a sad story to tell. So that should.
That's very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So how would you measure, your success? If you were to call yourself maybe like, that you're successful, and you may have your own personal definition for that, but what contributes to making you as a success, in your own definition?
I think if engaging with me has unlocked even a tiny knot in people's head that allows them to move one step forward in any way possible, that for me is a success. If people feel differently after engaging with me versus how they felt before, and in a positive way, that for me is a success.
That's beautiful.
Like a lot of times I feel like, so people engage with me on a one-time basis first, and I always encourage them to do that because it allows both of us a chance to really get to know each other and feel like safe and sure that we want to work together for longer. And if people come back and say, hey, yes, I would like to engage with you further, that in itself for me is a bit of a success, right?
Yeah, because they really felt to connect with you, and they obviously want to continue that. So
They see hope, and that for me is enough, I think.
that's really nice. I think uh, it's amazing that you had sorted that definition in your mind so clearly. I think for many of us, still sometimes that definition keeps changing, or there is no clarity in what success would mean to us. So it's really nice to see that you were so sorted about that.
There is no end to this, right? If you think about it, like me getting somebody married is not success. Them having a successful marriage and dying happily is success. But I'm not going to wait around till then to figure out if I was successful. This is in my control, and this is all I can do.
That's true. That's totally true. Have you had moments with clients, where you could actually clearly see there is a problem with the personality, there is an issue which they completely are not willing to acknowledge, but you can notice that, you can clearly see that, and if they can just tweak that one thing, it could make a difference in their attracting better companions or partners. So how do you deal with a situation like that if you encounter?
I don't, I mean, there are clients that you connect with very naturally, and the connection is very seamless. And there are clients with whom it's much more difficult to get through because their personality, like, is such that they aren't necessarily sort of the most easy people to talk to. But I never hold that against them because they are who they are, right? And I always wish for them to find people who are able to see them beyond that. I don't necessarily ever go and tell people, hey, it's really difficult to talk to you. You should be more friendly. And that's when people come talk to you. However, having said that, if somebody has any sort of, blocks in their mind, which is not necessarily a part of their personality, but, just misinterpretation of a situation they went through, then I help them trying to unlock. Like, for example, I can give an example of somebody who would always fall into this trap of fixing people's lives, be it with his friends or like past relationships and so on. And he always found that once his mission was accomplished with somebody, he would no longer be interested in them in some sense. So helping him see that pattern in the way he behaves made him realize that he wasn't so much getting into relationships because he liked that person, because he got excited by the challenge of fixing their life. So helping him see that kind of like opened him up. I really, like, for me, success is also in some sense about me shutting up and not saying anything, but allowing them to think for themselves.
I think in your approach, what I find so beautiful is you really are working towards enabling them. It's not about you giving them an instruction manual, follow this, rule book, and things will work out for you. But you're really digging deeper with them, making them contemplate and challenge their belief systems or certain blind spots that they are completely ignored, and making them aware. I think that really tools them up for living the life and really moving on with a potential partner, right?
Yeah. I mean, true. That's what I attempt to do, right? Like, but sometimes I also get clients who are like, just tell me what to do. That's why, I've come to you. I don't want to think for myself. So that's when, you kind of share market insights and things like that with them. But that's what they ask for, right? So
if you see a higher demand for that kind of information, would you be only catering to that in a unique way, or it's not your forte that you would want to pursue?
I think I get a good mix of these people, and I enjoy the mix.
There was this conversation that you were having with I think Urvashi, right? Yeah, on an Insta Live. And there was an interesting point which I don't remember what you said, but if a girl is smart, she's really smart and intelligent, should she really dumb down to really accommodate a partner? If she's really been looking for a guy for a long time, and then finally it's there is this guy which comes into the equation, everything seems all right, but his intelligence level and the girl's intelligence level are two different, at different scales. So should a girl really dumb down her intelligence to just accommodate a guy?
So I don't really know what exactly you're alluding to from our conversation, like from my conversation with Urvashi, but two things, right? One, no, I don't think a girl should dumb down. Two, there is never going to be a situation where the girl is okay with everything except his intelligence. It starts with the intelligence. So the other things don't come into picture till the intelligence cutoff is cleared. Like most women like intelligent men, because that's a proxy. That's a good proxy for them being successful in their careers or having a sort of stable like income or lifestyle, which is something that women do care about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that question does not exist, you think? So if she's an intelligent one, then she will never really fall for that kind of a situation where she has to really, take on a guy who is not as smart.
Yeah, most of the time that's what I've seen, right? But to your question on should a girl dumb down to accommodate a potential partner? No, right? I mean, why? Like, why should she? If that's not something she wants to do, why should she do that?
All right. So I'll shift gears. Then I want to move on to some other areas, which is with Indian matchmaking. Netflix release. There was a lot of media attention. To people who are in the similar line of work, and you definitely got some eyeballs coming your way.
Oh yeah.
So
for sure.
so how was that experience for you, and how good are you with media attention?
I'm okay. I kind of have a history of coming in the paper in my family, so I'm
Oh,
okay.
really?
I mean, some for the right reasons and some not so much, but
Okay.
I'm okay with media attention. It's something that I've been used to for a while now. Not that I'm like a celebrity or anything, but then like at least within the family, right? Like I'm probably amongst the only ones who gets featured in newspapers like very often compared to my relatives.
When was the first time you got featured in any media? Like, what's the story behind that?
Uh, I think it was some like silly like school fest where we ended up getting some prize or something like that. Oh no, actually, yeah, maybe it was like getting some rank in some sort of competitive like exam, like math exam or something like that. So things like that.
Okay, and you got featured in the newspaper, or was it in the television?
Yeah. No, in the newspaper. Oh, actually, I had my first television debut when I was 7 years old. So
Wow. Okay, tell me about that. What was that?
it was some dumb kid show where like some kids talent show, like where you just had to show some talent, and I came in like one of these regional sort of channels.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, Sun TV network channels. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so you've been in on and off with media in different platforms. Okay.
No, but like talking about the Indian matchmaking experience, that was special because I felt like it sort of made my profession legit, because until then, I think at least among family, like people had no clue what I was doing. And they thought I was running a little sort of hobby, like charity, or like they had no clue what I was doing, right? Like, so to see that in the paper, I think people felt like I'm doing something with my life,
Absolutely.
which is obviously nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it gives a solid validation to what you do, right? So
Yeah, definitely, right?
and I think so. How did your parents feel? Like, were there any calls from them, or did you scream to them? Look, I'm featured in the paper.
No, I kind of knew that I was going to be featured in the paper because I was interviewed a few days back, like before that, right? So I kind of gave them a heads up. So that morning they went and like got the paper and all of that. So yeah. But yeah, it was good. It was good to get that publicity, simply because it was nice to be acknowledged as doing something serious, because people would always laugh. Like, for example, I remember I went for this family function, like some wedding in the family, and somebody was like, so what do you do? Do you like work or like do you stay at home? And I said, yeah, I run my own business. And the person was like, what business? And I said, I run a matrimonial advisory thing. And he just burst out laughing. Like,
Oh my God.
yeah. So you're just like, yeah, which bit was funny? Like, because that's what I do, right? And then he just like, he didn't want to talk further because he thought I was a crazy person saying rubbish to crack him up. Uh, but yeah, so from that perspective, it was nice.
I think it's a phenomenal thing that you're doing. I find it the very reason I wanted to feature you in the show is because you're doing something which is very unconventional, and it has a lot of value in a way which people are really not looking into. So it's like
I like to
super
believe
good.
that, yeah. At least it makes me feel good every time I talk to somebody and I feel like I've made a difference, in some tiny way to their life. It feels nice.
I think you should start a YouTube video series, on this relatives. That'll be interesting. Interesting questions and remarks. So
yeah, true.
you and Karthik, both you guys are also parents, right? You have a little daughter.
Yeah. We have a 4-year-old.
4-year-old. So by the time she grows up into a young adult, do you think this concept of marriage will still exist? And do you think it will be still relevant the way it is now?
I don't know. I'm okay either ways because I don't necessarily go tell people that they should get married. If they want to get married, I help them. So I'm okay whether this institution exists or not.
So there is no fixed framework about one should marry, one should not marry, or it's live in. Is it companionship or is it
I mean we're
same sex marriage or whatever?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? Like we're social animals. We enjoy having someone else witness our life up close. And from that perspective, companionship is great. And whatever format works for people, right? Like I have some of my closest friends aren't married, but they live together and they have children together and things like that. And it hardly makes a difference.
Yeah, that's true. I think the more broader we start thinking about this, I think the less rigid we would be, and there could be more harmony in the way we deal with people, right? So
yeah. The important thing is to understand that it takes commitment to make a relationship work from both sides. And whether you want to sort of force the commitment through the structure of a marriage or whether you want to make that sort of assessment on a daily basis on your own, it's really up to you.
Do you see people really not having the patience or the long-term longevity mindset lately? Everybody is in a hurry to get things going. Everything has to happen fast. Do you think that is the problem?
So I think for the we've always had the kind of problems that we had even now, right? It's just that we didn't talk about it 30 years ago, but we talk about it today, right? There is ample opportunity for us to talk about issues in a marriage. People did not have the confidence or the courage to walk out of their marriages and say, I'm going to be okay on my own, because they lived in a society where they prioritized the society over themselves. But given that we as a society are becoming more individualistic, we prioritize our needs over that of the society. And so many more people are able to sort of walk out of their marriages and say that they don't want to go through this. It could also be that there is lesser friction today to be able to do that, right? Like people accept divorced people much more today than they did like 30-40 years ago. So it's easier to do that, right? Like, so I wouldn't say there are any like new problems or anything. It's just easier to do this.
Yeah. So just that with the availability of all kind of medias and internet, this is becoming more visible, right? I think these problems always existed. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for example, like we probably 20 years ago we probably ate out lesser, or brought food home and like from a restaurant ate lesser. But today, because there's your Swiggy or a Deliveroo or whatever, it's so easy to order food, and you end up eating like outside food like 3-4 times a week,
Right.
because it's easier. It's not that outside food is tastier today, or there's some new issue. It's just easier.
All right. Now I'm going to move into that segment where I think we'll get to hear a little more about you.
Okay.
So you are a voracious reader, right? I think you keep mentioning, interesting books, then stuff that you're reading. So from a reading perspective or from a book recommendation perspective, what would be your top 3 recommendation for people who are into dating or planning to marry?
Right. Yeah. Firstly, let me clarify that I'm not really a voracious reader. I've never been a reader, and I've always loved to be a reader. But I must say that over the last few years, I've been attempting to read a lot more than I ever did before. So, for instance, I think now this year I've probably read like 16, 17 books. I don't really know if it counts for a voracious reader, but I think I'm doing better than I'd expected, so I'm okay.
I always felt, people who have the ability to pen down and write things, they definitely are also really good at reading. So, and you were penning down, you were mentioning a couple of good books too.
Yeah.
So I did make an assumption, but that definitely qualifies for a reader who's an active reader. So yes.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of books, the one that I most recently read was this book called "Hold Me Tight" by this person called Dr. Sue Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
It is a book about marriages and committed relationships, and I thought it was a phenomenal book. Like her perspective of relationships was just very refreshingly positive, and that is something that I would highly recommend that people who are in relationships read. But even if you aren't in one and you're about to get into one, you should absolutely read it, because it gives you a few different examples of what relationships look like at a very fundamental level. Like, I'm somebody who believes that a relationship is essentially two people interacting. And that's what makes one relationship different from another, is in the way the interaction happens. So she gives you examples of few different types of interactions. And it's very interesting to see how she gets people to sort of open up and interact differently.
Okay.
That's
so that'll be
definitely
one book. Okay.
The others, I can't think of like anything like too related to dating and things like that I'd want to recommend. I do read a lot of books about that, but the one that I thought was really powerful and that sort of shapes marriage for Auntie in some sense is this book called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, who's the founder of Nike.
Founder. Yeah. Shoe Dog.
Yeah, that's a book that I absolutely love, because I feel like that was the book that made me want to jump into this full time and try to see what I can make of this.
What about the book triggered that journey for you? What's exactly was the instance of the book?
I think you always see like founders after they've become successful, and the magnitude of their success sometimes overwhelms you. But the way that book has been written is almost like 80-90% of the book is him just trying to explain what it took to even get to a point of success.
Right,
like all the doubts that he had, all the, just moments of not being sure of where this was headed, and all the decisions he made. Like I feel like it's been written in a very vulnerable manner, which is very appealing for someone who is contemplating that decision. So yeah, that was definitely a very powerful book for me.
Yeah, and in that book, he really explores. I think you can really see he's going through so much chaos, and along with that, he's really moving forward, right? So, yeah, I remember I hadn't completed the book, but the story where he is dealing with the Japanese,
Yeah.
and that was fascinating how he really made that work, right? So
No, it's a really cool book. I remember reading this book like through my commute when I lived in London, and at the end of the book, I remembered wanting to really like move back to try and do this full time.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So
That's amazing.
yeah. And third book, probably, this is a very interesting read. It's a book called Dataclysm. It's a book by Christian Rudder, who is the founder of OkCupid, which is a dating app within the Match.com umbrella.
Could you repeat the name? I just missed that.
Dataclysm.
Data. How do you spell that?
Dataclysm.
Okay. Okay.
Dataclysm. Yeah, it's by this guy called Christian Rudder.
Mm-hmm.
He is the founder of OkCupid. Have you heard of OkCupid?
Yes, I've heard of that. Yes.
Yeah, so he's the founder of that. So this book is actually a very, very interesting book, which is basically a lot of insights about dating based on the data that they collected through OkCupid.
Wow. Okay.
They spoke about the things that people didn't tell them, but you notice it through activity. Like, for example, I remember this very, very interesting graph that I saw where they tried to show by ages what ages of women found what ages of men attractive and the other way around. And there was this very interesting insight where they said no matter how old the guy is, he will always find a 22-year-old girl attractive. So the book is full of insights like this, which is very, very interesting. And for anyone trying to find a partner through dating apps or matrimonial apps, I would highly recommend that they read. Yeah.
What about the girls? What did they find attractive?
It naturally sort of progresses with age. Like,
okay.
It's correlated to their own age.
Does it align with your understanding about evolution? You still it kind of fits into your definition when you saw the data?
I don't know if it's my definition as such, but I can see that it's very aligned with the sort of observations that I make of the market, where on these matrimonial apps, you see that somebody is 36 years old, but they want girls between 22 and 28. And you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
True.
But yeah,
true.
yeah, I do see this. Yeah.
Okay. What has been your biggest pain point, in your line of work, especially in the recent years?
Biggest pain point.
I can point you to one though. You really hate it when people give away your numbers to some uncle aunties.
Yeah. Talking on like doing unscheduled calls makes me really, really nervous.
Right.
Because it's just that I spend most of my day on calls with people. With my clients. And so when I get an unscheduled call by someone totally random who absolutely does not understand what I do.
Could you give an example of how that would be?
I don't know, like somebody will get a number from someone and they'll be like, hey, I'm your like aunt's walking friends, neighbors, best friends. So I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, tell me. And they'll be like, I'm just going to WhatsApp you like my son's horoscope. These are our requirements, like, blah, blah, blah. Can you send some like profiles on WhatsApp? You'll be like, you'll be like, I have a website. Can you ask your like son to go register on the website? And they'll be like, yeah, okay. And then they look at it and they like never come back to you after that.
Oh God, yeah.
Sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's also people who contact you because they got your number from somebody, and they'll be like, they'll quiz you a lot. Like they quiz me a lot about who I am and what I do and what my caste is and like what my everything is before they share any details about themselves.
They're evaluating you. Oh.
Yeah. And they'll also give me like free advice on how I should believe in caste and I should practice my caste and things like that.
Free advice. Okay.
Yeah. But I would say like the most painful bit of my work is trying to explain what I do, because it's not easy to understand because it's not something that is easily available. And I think in some sense, I'd like to think that I am a pioneer who's kind of establishing this field. So this pain is expected. As much as I hate it, I completely sort of understand and I try my best. And that's why I have a YouTube channel where I try to explain what I do by sort of talking about it in different ways. Hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a great place. People, if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, I think you definitely must head to Priyanka's YouTube channel. I think it's a phenomenal resource addressing the common concerns I think people generally have in their mind, right? I think you really put that out very clearly with a lot of acting. You do pretty good there. So were you in drama? Like you were a theater person?
No, I wasn't.
Like you pretty much pull out the typical South Indian, mother or father's, dialogue very well. I really like.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I can just watch you and I say, "Arey yaar, I have seen this behavior before, right? This is interesting."
Right,
so, yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm horrible. I'm horrible with these videos. I'm very, very like uncomfortable in front of camera, and it actually took me a bunch of parody videos that I made to get myself comfortable with being on video.
Yeah. I think, especially now with COVID, everybody has no choice but really to get comfortable with technology or camera in front of them, right? So I think it's a good thing happening in a way.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about, was there any article or a piece of content that you created and you really put in a lot of heart and soul into it, and you thought this will be like a kick-ass stuff, people will like really rave about it, but nothing happened?
Like all of my stuff, no? Like,
come on. No, but still, is there a piece which you really worked quite a bit, and I want to flip that question also. That could be a piece which you wrote without expecting much, but it got a lot of traction. So,
I mean, that has happened a few times, but I can't like think. I can't really. Yeah, probably this one. I mean, I'm just trying to remember. So I remember writing a piece of fiction called Dear Mummy. It was.
Oh yeah. I did give it a reading. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting. But it didn't sort of become as widely read as I'd hoped for. But I thought it was so interesting, and I thought like a lot of people would be able to relate to it. But yeah, it didn't become as popular.
Okay. And any piece which you didn't think it will do great, and then it got a good response, people kind of reached out to you saying that was good?
So this probably goes back to 2018, where I had a column in a newspaper called Mint. I don't know if you've heard of the paper. It's a Hindustan Times publication. Yeah. So I used to have a relationship column on that paper. And
really?
I remember, this was in 2018. I remember writing about how 30s is not the new 20s, as in I wrote about how like people would like to think that, you can very well get married in your 30s and your options would be just as much. But the reality is it's not true. So I think a lot of people in their 30s really connected with it. So I had a lot of people reaching out to me at that point of time. But obviously when I wrote it, I wasn't thinking at all. Like I just wrote something, and it was interesting to see the number of people who reached out. And
You want to write a newer article for the 40s and the 30s?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting piece. I did read the 30s, the new 20s. Yes, that was.
Yeah, because I think for me it was a bit of a turning point where until then, I think my advisory service was quite sort of, it was very fluid, and I wasn't quite sure about what I was doing with it. But I think this was the point when I got a lot of clients, and working with so many people at once who were going through very different issues helped me sort of structure my own service itself. And I think from that perspective, it was definitely a turning point in some sense.
Nice. What's something most people do not know about you?
As I said, yeah, like they don't know that I had a life before marriage broker Auntie. That I have a very strong background in operations and, in manufacturing and tech. That I've studied and worked in a few different countries across 3 continents, because of which, my clients find it very easy to relate to me. But like, if they're not my clients, they don't know that about me. Because a lot of times, some people talk to me, and, especially parents talk to me, and like, they'll think that I'm some random, marriage broker. And they'll be like, oh, like in US and all, like they'll be very busy with work. You see, they work in like Google. And I'm like, I kind of know what that life's like, but then, I don't say it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But most people don't know that I had a life outside of marriage broker Auntie.
Yeah, I think you're not big on really endorsing that, so people don't get to know that. But I think once they get to know that, I think perspectives will change. How they see you. So
I mean, I definitely use that to my benefit, in the sense that it really helps me in relating to all my clients, because they come from very similar sort of backgrounds or worldviews. But I don't really go out there and tell people saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm educated." Like, if you don't really guess that based on how much I try to understand you, then yeah, it's okay. You don't need to know.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of, as you rightly stated, a lot of the parents who are the overprotective type, I think they come to really evaluate you, or just to gauge, do you really know what you're dealing with? That kind of a approach.
Yeah, true. I mean, I don't blame them, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a certain mindset.
Yeah.
Right. What books have shaped your thinking? Or are there any books which were early influences in your life?
So I mostly prefer reading fiction. I don't really enjoy reading nonfiction. I prefer to sort of, listen to a TED talk, or like read a blog or something like that. So I find it really hard to get through nonfiction unless it's written very, very well. Like, for example, some of the nonfiction books that I enjoyed reading were things like Sapiens, or there was this other book, I forget who the author is, but it's called How Music Got Free.
Okay.
It's about how the starting of MP3 and like free music and music going online and things like that. That was especially relevant when I was working in the entertainment media business when I was in London. But like, a book needs to be really, really well written, like nonfiction, for me to get through it. But otherwise, I enjoy fiction. Like, I enjoy reading fiction. So I don't know if I can say anything like shape my thinking, apart from the ones that I mentioned earlier, which is Shoe Dog, Hold Me Tight, and Dataclysm, for sure.
Okay, and what format do you listen, or do you listen to audiobooks, or do you read physical books?
I read. Yeah, I can't listen to audiobooks. Like, I get too distracted. I prefer to read and like kind of get lost in it.
What's a question you wished more people asked you?
What's a question? What do you do? Rather than assuming that I matchmake.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's worth repeating. Yes.
Yeah, I would love for people to ask me what I do.
Yeah. I think, wow, that's an interesting answer. I like that. Okay. Wow, Priyanka. I think I really had a blast having this conversation with you. There is so much more actually I wanted to go deep in. Then my podcast is going to become 3 hours, which is not something our audience will, unless they're extremely committed audio listeners, we will lose out on potential people who should be listening to this message. So
for sure.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed your conversation, and I want you to continue doing what you do. I think you're doing a phenomenal job out there. So just
Thank you
keep
so
it
much.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation as well. I think you're amazing in terms of the kind of questions you had in mind, and yeah, it was great, right? Like I feel like a lot of podcasts don't do as well because they don't have very interesting hosts, and the hosts don't know how to like listen and ask questions. I think you're doing a great job.
Hey, wow. Thank you, Priyanka. That's really nice hearing from a relationship coach. So thank you so much.
Cool. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the show. All the key points discussed will be available in the show notes section at www.rareearth.com. That is RareErth.com. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you really enjoyed, please do give me your feedback, review, and rate on iTunes or any listening app of your choice. Do subscribe and share. Thank you.